What's the pulse on some Tennessee Volunteers down in Mobile getting ready for the Senior Bowl? A couple of Tennessee Volunteers took the time and spoke for the first time in quite some time. We're going to play some of those audio clips and discuss it as Senior Bowl week continues down in Mobile, Alabama. All that and more here on your Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday and welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols, your Thursday edition. It's brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn to go ahead and get started today. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. You can always find me on Twitter. That's at _Kaner and at Locked On Vols. And please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and get those views up. And thanks for making it your first listen wherever you get your podcast. Okay, so our friends over at 104.5 The Zone, right? We had Will Bowling on the show yesterday, and his cohorts down there, Ramon Foster, BFL, and former NFL great, Kayla Anderson and Will himself, they're down there all week long, along with a lot of our Locked On personnel. But that radio show, heard in the mid-state, Nashville 104.5 The Zone, they had an opportunity to catch up and spend some time with Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker, Tennessee offensive lineman Darnell Wright. Going to play some clips from those interviews here on today's show. It's going to be wildly courtesy of 104.5 The Zone, so can't thank them enough for making easy programming for me here today. Going to hear a lot from those guys. We'll hear from Hendon Hooker here at the top of the show in segment 1, Darnell Wright in segment 2, and then who were some other Vols that have benefited from the Senior Bowl throughout this Tennessee history, really the last 25 years or so. We're going to go down that list and tell you all that. It's a heavy Senior Bowl edition of the show here on Locked On Vols. First, let's go ahead and get started. So Hendon Hooker joined that radio show. Again, that is Ramon, Kayla, and Will. It's on the air 7 to 10, I believe, or 6 to 10 Central Time. And that's 7 to 11 here on the Eastern Time Zone every single day in the Mid-State. But they are down in Mobile this week. Had a chance to catch up with Hendon Hooker earlier today and ask him a series of questions. We're going to hear his responses. But, what's it mean to be a Tennessee Volunteer now, leaving the university and preparing for the next stage in life? That is, of course, the NFL Draft and becoming a part of a new locker room. Here's what Hendon Hooker said on that.
Just being a VFL and trying to represent everyone who came before us and everyone who's going to come after us, making sure that we set that standard, that we're hard hat guys. We come in and we want to work and compete and make our mark on any team that we're on.
Again, that's Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker, and then he was asked about when did he kind of know that, this was going to be a special season? When did he know that the proof was kind of in the pudding and that they knew they had something going there? Was it the Florida win? Was it the Alabama win? Was it the LSU win? Kind of when did he know that? And it was a little bit earlier than all that. Here's Hendon Hooker.
After our first player-led skills and drills, I remember getting on the phone with my mother and father and just telling them how special we were going to be this past year. Just the work and the encouragement that we got from Coach Heupel and the rest of the coaches. I remember Coach Hype telling everyone, we got some extra gear for y'all to come in and get extra work. So, all throughout the summer, I saw a lot of young guys in there catching jugs or going up and watching film with the GAs or their position coaches. So everyone was just hungry to get better. And after that first skills and drills, I saw how hard we competed and how special we were, not just on offense but on defense as well. We still toasted them every day, but
small flex right now. I'm here for that.
But I saw how special we were and how competitive we were, and I was eager to get out there on game day.
So it started early on. It was in the offseason. It was an offseason mentality that said, hey, let's continue to get better. Got some extra gear for y'all to get some extra work in, right? That's what he said the coaches were saying, Josh Heupel and some others. And I love that little jab in there he threw at the defense, still toasted them every single day. But that's what good teams do. They get better, and it starts in the offseason. That's what happened with Tennessee's football team this time last year ahead of that 11-win season. But, of course, it takes a quarterback, takes a head coach, takes a play caller. Got to have a special bond. Hendon Hooker was asked about his head man, Josh Heupel, and what he's meant to him.
That's my right-hand man. Love him to death. Every day we would come in when he first got there, he would always look at me and say, "Come on, man, smile. Like, smile, have fun." I'd be so serious. And he'd be like, "Smile, have fun, relax, play your game. I want you to go out there and have fun." And that's what he encourages all of us to do. So just having that confidence from him boosted my confidence, and then just encouraged me to put confidence into my teammates as well.
We've heard that a couple different times throughout some different media availabilities. Joey Halsey, who's now the offensive coordinator, but this past season when he met with the media and he was talking about Hendon Hooker, I believe it might have actually been in fall camp, and he's like, hey, this time last year in fall camp, I'm like, have some confidence about yourself. Saw him play basketball. He was talking trash. He was the most skilled player and the most confident player on the court. And I said, that's what you need to do on the football field. So it looks like Hendon Hooker kind of had a change in personality, and obviously that helped him gain the locker room, and then his play on the field kind of backed that up as well. So that's kind of interesting about him saying that Josh Heupel was like, hey, man, smile, have fun, smile, play your game, because we've kind of heard that before. What about obviously one of the high moments of this past football season, knocking off Alabama for the first time in 16 years? Here's what Hendon Hooker said about that magical third Saturday in October of this past football season.
That was the first time I was actually on the positive side of rushing the field. So that was a treat. I tried not to get trampled. So I ran out to the middle of the field for 5 seconds. I realized how fast the stadium was getting flooded, and I just ran to the locker room and celebrated with my teammates and my family in there. So it was a surreal moment. We approached that week as pros and as vets in this field of business, and we came out on top.
Yeah, I mean that was a fun night, and a smart move on Hendon Hooker to kind of celebrate from him and then say, okay, well, it's going to get a little too chaotic. Let's run down in the locker room and get that real celebration on. So that was a high point, obviously, for Tennessee fans, Tennessee football team, and Hendon Hooker himself. Low point, obviously, South Carolina game, and then that's the game where Hendon Hooker also got hurt and was lost for the rest of that game, the rest of the season against Vanderbilt and the Orange Bowl. Obviously, the reason he can't play in the Senior Bowl coming up on Saturday at 2:30 Eastern Time. But how's that recovery process going for Hendon Hooker? It's going really, really well. That's what he said earlier in the week. Here's some more in detail about his recovery process for that torn ACL.
How's the process of healing been for you?
Yeah, the process of healing has been great. I remember my first day out of surgery, I was bending at 60%.
Man.
So I started my rehab the day after my surgery.
Yeah.
And then being able to finally I got to start bending it like this right here after 2 weeks. And, being able to really walk around and be off my brace and off those crutches. My forearms aren't burning everywhere I go. So being able to just do the things that I do on a daily basis and work out total body, not just my upper body, not just my right leg, and not doing, tabletop workouts is what I call them,
right?
In the training room. So actually being able to move and move around like I want to in the weight room, it's been fun.
He didn't say it there, but he did say earlier in the week down in Mobile that he plans on being running full speed by the end of March, and so that is some really, really good progress for Hendon Hooker. He expects to be 100% full go, ready to roll by camp time. So that is by minicamp. That is a really, really good sign for Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker goes out and comes in 5-star quarterback Nico Iamaleava. Of course, he's already signed. He's a mid-year enrollee. He's been there practicing a little bit. Big spring for Nico. What does Hendon Hooker think about Nico? But also, you'll catch it here. He's staying loyal to his guy Joe. Nico's
a special kid. I'm excited for his journey and his growth coming in and replacing that second quarterback spot is a big step, for a freshman. It's also a blessing. So to be able to get those reps in practice and be able to come in, I'm expecting Joe to throw some bombs early and get Nico in there in a couple games. So I'm excited to see his development.
More on that relationship with Joe Milton and Nico Iamaleava moving forward now with Hendon Hooker heading to the pros.
I'm excited to watch my man Joe throw that thing around. I told him I'm coming to the spring game in a Joe Milton jersey, and he better autograph it or we're going to have some problems. But I'm excited for him. I'm excited for his supporting cast. He got some wideouts coming in, and we got some weapons coming in also from the transfer portal. Also some freshmen. So little Nico is going to learn a lot from Joe. And I'm excited to see him, take the reins when Joe's gone after next year.
So obviously excited to see what Nico can do and everything, but made it abundantly clear a couple times, like this is Joe's team right now. Those guys are closer than brother, closer than blood. And It will be interesting to see how Nico competes, but my expectation is that it's going to be Joe Milton as well. A couple more here from Hendon Hooker before we turn things over to Darnell Wright. What about that leadership style? Remember, he'll go into it here. It took him a little while to gain that locker room, but when he did, everybody listened. He's a quiet guy. Speak softly, carry a big stick. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite presidents all time. Here's what Hendon Hooker said about his leadership style.
I want to connect with everyone on the team, be able to communicate in our own special way, have an off-the-field relationship first, and then, transition to that football side. I remember getting to Tennessee, and everyone was like, well, the only football we watch is on CBS at 3:30.
Yeah, right.
So,
right.
You have nice highlights, bro, but you're playing the ACC. I'm like, okay. So I led from, winter workouts and just kind of made connections, didn't really say too much. But brought great energy, and when we were having sprints and stuff, I was very competitive, trying to push guys. And then when we got to spring ball, I made a couple linebackers. I broke their ankles, and then they came back to the locker room and was like, okay, you can play ball. You can play ball.
I've heard him say that before. That's really funny. It's like, okay, you a little shimmy shake there on the practice field. Okay, yeah, you can play now because you got by me, right? I just think that's funny. A couple more here for Hendon Hooker. Now, obviously, he's not playing in this game, but it's still a big week for him. He is making the rounds. He's talking with general managers, director of player personnel, sometimes coaches, all that type of stuff. It's big in that regard. He's talked with a lot of NFL teams already this week. He'll speak on this, but one in particular for all you Tennessee Titans fans should get you excited. That was the first team that he met with. Here's what Hendon Hooker had to say about that on the Ramon, Kayla, and Will show earlier yesterday morning.
It's been a gauntlet of teams for sure. You meet with everyone, and I just have a blast talking ball. And then meeting with the Titans was really cool. Kind of a surreal moment for sure, because that was the first team that I talked to in the interview process. So being able to just sit down with the head man and talk ball, it's been a blast.
And then finally, this kind of will transition us into who we're going to hear from next in segment 2, offensive lineman Darnell Wright. Short and sweet here from Hendon Hooker, but he could not accomplish anything without the big hog mollies up front. What he had to say about his 5 best friends in front of him.
Those are my guys. Go to war for them, 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
And they do the same for me.
Again, short and sweet. That was Hendon Hooker talking about his Tennessee offensive line. Good stuff there from Hendon Hooker, and if I'm not mistaken, at least I know we did some NFL Network stuff earlier in the week, but that might be the first time he's spoken in a media setting since his injury. So good to hear from him again. Of course, that audio is courtesy of 104.5 The Zone, the Ramon, Kayla, and Will show. Big shout-out to Jonathan Schaefer, their producer, for making that readily available for me. Go ahead and listen to those guys. They're down there in Mobile all week long. They do awesome work. All right, we're going to hear from Darnell Wright. They also caught up with Darnell Wright earlier this week. That's coming up next right here on Locked on Vols. But I do want to remind you guys about our new proud sponsor of the show. That is FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Really excited about that new partnership. The #1 sportsbook in America, that's FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports so much fun and so easy. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today, right before Super Bowl 57, with a no-sweat first bet promotion. You'll get $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to the point spreads and who will score touchdowns. FanDuel Sportsbook, it's safe, it's secure, it's super easy to use, and best of all, you get paid instantly for your winnings. So join FanDuel Sportsbook today. That's at FanDuel.com/lockedon. There, you can claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We continue on this Thursday show. It's Locked on Vols, your first listen each and every day, and I'm your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for always hanging out with me here today, and it's a large audio show. I want you guys to hear from some players down at the Senior Bowl for Tennessee. Just heard from quarterback Hendon Hooker, and now you're going to hear from offensive lineman, offensive tackle Darnell Wright. A big thanks to our friends over at 104.5 The Zone, Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, and Will Bowling. Shout out to their producer, Jonathan Schaefer, for making this available for me. They had these guests on their radio show and allowing me to use this audio, so big thanks, and go listen to them as well. It's good stuff, though, and it's good to hear from the quarterback, Hendon Hooker, obviously coming back from injury. What about Darnell Wright's offensive tackle? And, I talked with Will about this yesterday. Darnell Wright hadn't spoken. He didn't speak to the media at all this year. That was his decision. Wanted to focus, just wanted to focus on football. And I mean, to each their own, right? But you also need to make yourself available. You want to come across as personable. You want to come across as a good kid. I'm not saying he's not a good kid. I'm just saying allowing yourself to talk and speak with the media does that for you. Let us go do our jobs. Let us write stories about you. Let us take what you say and kind of pump you up. That's what we do, right? So it was a little intriguing, when he never met with the media this year, and I kind of knew that back in fall camp that was his plans. But nonetheless, he did, catch up on the ball with Austin Price on the VolQuest Confidential a couple weeks ago, which was really good. He did a great job, and he did a really good job in this interview as well. So rooting for Darnell Wright. He's a great player. But he joined that show, Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, and Will Bowling, and here's what he had to say on a couple number of different things. It was a big season for Tennessee. What was Darnell Wright's thoughts on that 11-2 win, or that 11-2 campaign that resulted in an Orange Bowl win at the end of the season?
Yeah, it started off. I feel like we instilled a confidence into the team. I mean, starting with Hendon, he really he wasn't just a guy that talked just to talk. He really believed what he was saying, and it was easy to really get behind him, and that trickled down to the whole team. And I think that's the reason why we had such a big year.
Again, so many of this conversation always goes back to quarterback Hendon Hooker, not only for his play, but his leadership style off the field in that huddle. And it made them, a little bit nervous when he was not there for the Vanderbilt game, for the Orange Bowl. And Darnell Wright kind of spoke on the Orange Bowl, still getting that win without Hendon Hooker. And then, of course, seeing Joe Milton step up. At
that time, we could have went a couple ways. I mean, Hendon was out. Everybody had a little bit of a didn't know what was going to happen with Joe, blah, blah, blah. But, I don't think we ever faltered. I don't think we ever – we knew it as a team what we could accomplish. And I feel like we just went out there and did what we could do.
That they did. Went out there and kicked the tail of Clemson. I mean, point blank. I mean, Tennessee just beat the crap out of them. So a good job in that regard. What more about Joe Milton, his progression, his improvements from the beginning of the 2021 season, and what's Tennessee kind of getting out of its new quarterback now moving forward into the 2023 season? What does Darnell Wright think about Joe Milton up close?
He's made strides and bounds that nobody's probably ever seen was thought about him. And I think he's going to continue to get better. I mean, just finding that – I really think it's finding that confidence in himself as well. And, I mean, we've seen what he's done in games, and that's really only the tip of the iceberg for him.
If you're an offensive lineman, sure, you're out there. You don't want to give up any sacks. Mind you, Darnell Wright has not given up a sack in his last 19 games at Tennessee, so that's quite an accomplishment there. But you're up there to move that line of scrimmage and to allow your team to run the football. If you're an offensive lineman, you take pride in running the football. Guy on that radio show, Ramon Foster, guy that did it for 11, 12 years in the National Football League, did it at an all-SEC type level here at Tennessee. Moving that, driving that pile and moving the line of scrimmage, running the football. Darnell Wright, what did he think about their performance this past season and running the football and kind of aiding this fast-paced offense with a run game?
I think that's probably one of the most underrated things that we did. I mean, Jabari, Jay Wright, Sampson came in. I mean, everybody just did. I mean, they did what they did. You know what I'm saying? I think that's probably one of the most underrated things this year. I mean, I think we had more touchdowns than, or at least more than people would expect.
On the ground. Yeah,
38 rushing touchdowns. That was the most in NCAA football in Division I this year. So you're exactly right. He didn't quite know that, but he was saying, and I think we had more than anybody. Yeah, you did. That was number one in the country. And for 2 years, Tennessee has averaged 200 yards on the ground a game. And I was speaking with Jordan Marshall, four-star running back, 2024 class, who was on campus for the junior day over the weekend. And he was just kind of like, I mean, I was kind of really surprised learning more about this offense because I thought it was just air it out and throw it all over the place. I mean, no, it's not. Tennessee runs this football, and that's what Josh Heupel's continuously said ever since he took the job a couple years ago. So, Tennessee was a really, really good running team, and it was because they had guys like Darnell Wright up front. And, man, Darnell Wright is going to be just a huge loss for Tennessee this year. He was good. I mean, he was really, really good, and I think this week he is helping himself out an awful lot. And a reason why he's also so appealing to coaches and GMs at the next level is his versatility. Started his first 2 seasons on Rocky Top at right tackle. As a junior, flipped over, played left tackle in 2021, then moved back over to the right side as a senior. about that process and playing at a high clip on both sides of the line of scrimmage.
So obviously I was playing left last year, and I was training left the whole time, and we kind of had a situation on our hands, as everyone knew what we had on our hands. We didn't have a lot of tackles. I mean, we had a couple swing guys, but me and Coach, we kind of came together, had the same epiphany. I mean, moving me to right, I've had probably the most experience there. I mean, I could play left.
Yep.
I mean, I did it for a year, but having the most experience there, it just made the team that much better, I feel like.
And then finally, before the NFL draft, you got to go through this Senior Bowl practices and NFL Combine and Pro Day and all that type of stuff. But specifically this week, being down there, going up against who you're going up against every single week, every single day, it's a great opportunity for all these guys, especially Darnell Wright. Here's what he had to say about being down in Mobile at the Reese Senior Bowl and taking part in practice.
I mean, I love to compete against people that just I don't really know much about, didn't scout them as much as I could have throughout the season, and just really letting my instincts take over and just going against something it's the best people here in the country.
That's a really good point that I've not really considered before. You have these guys, and sure, they might see some social media buzz. Maybe they'll check the rosters and stuff. But, I mean, they don't know who's going to be there. They don't know who's going to be playing in this game. And it's not like you sit down and watch tape, for 5 straight days and you go up and practice and you put guys in tendencies based on film and all that. And then you go out and play on Saturday. You've scouted, you've repped it, and you know what's coming. You have no clue what's coming. And again, I've mentioned this numerous times. The game, sure, it is what it is, but it's the practice sessions. It's those one-on-one opportunities that you're really, trying to, block a defensive end, block a linebacker screaming off the edge and picking those up in one-on-one pass sets. I mean, that's what Darnell Wright's doing right now. So not having the opportunity to scout and really just letting talent and instinct take over, that is what's helping him against the best of the best. Really good stuff there from Darnell Wright, and I saw earlier in the week, and I've been bookmarking these on my Twitter account. This is from Monday and Tuesday, first couple days of practice, and Trevor Sakima, I always mispronounce his name, I'm sorry. He's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, does great work on the NFL channel, but he tweeted out, offensive tackle Darnell Wright likes taking the fight to his pass rushers, made first contact here and dominated the rep after doing so. Love this mentality. He shows, if you're watching on YouTube, he shows a clip here of Darnell Wright doing a one-on-one pass set, and really, really good stuff there. Earlier in the week as well, James Boyd of The Athletic, who covers the Colts, said, guys that stood out to me today at the Senior Bowl, Tennessee edge Byron Young, which I bookmarked this for this segment because I thought it said Darnell Wright. But anyway, nonetheless, another Tennessee football player, Byron Young, getting some love as well down there at the Senior Bowl. It is Hendon Hooker, it is Byron Young, and it is Darnell Wright down there at the Senior Bowl. Of course, Hendon Hooker not playing, but those other two are practicing, going through reps, and will take part in the game Saturday at 2:30 Eastern Time. Who else in Tennessee football history has taken part in this Senior Bowl, and how did it help them at the next level? We'll discuss that coming up in segment number 3, right here in a second on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, we got a final segment left here of this Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with me here today. We know of quarterback Hendon Hooker, of offensive tackle Darnell Wright, and of edge rusher Byron Young. Those three are down there at the Senior Bowl this week. But who else? What other Tennessee football players have taken part in the Senior Bowl and the Senior Bowl week activities? Well, I went back 25 years, and this is who I could find in the last 25 years, or really since the turn of the century in 2000. There's been more before that, and I know there has. I'm sorry, but only time. It's a time strain, right? I had to go back and research this. Let's start in the year 2000, and this is tied for, actually, this is the most Tennessee representatives in Mobile for the Senior Bowl that I found, at least since 2000, and it was in 2000. In 2000, Tennessee had 6 representatives down at the Senior Bowl. Offensive lineman Chad Clifton, defensive back Dwayne Goodrich, quarterback T. Martin, offensive lineman Spencer Riley, Raynoch Thompson, and Devin Walker. All 6 of those guys represented Tennessee down in the Senior Bowl. In 2001, you had 3 representatives, kicker David Lederton, Cedric Wilson, and linebacker Eric Westmoreland. Some pretty good players there. In 2022, you had 5 players. Will Bartholomew, played a little fullback and tight end. Defensive back Andre Lott, defensive lineman Will Overstreet, running back Travis Stevens, and offensive lineman Fred Weary. Again, a lot of representation back then because, again, there was not as many bowl games, if you will. Let's go up here to 2003. Two guys from Tennessee took part in the Senior Bowl. Defensive back Julian Battle and offensive lineman Rashad Moore. In 2004, only one, offensive lineman Scott Wells. In 2005, two, punter Dustin Colquitt and running back Cedric Houston. Pretty good players in their Tennessee days, right? And, of course, Dustin Colquitt, a pretty good player in his NFL days. Let's go up here to 2006. Four representatives from Tennessee. Offensive lineman Cody Douglas, defensive lineman Paris Harrelson, defensive lineman Jesse Mahalona, and offensive tackle Albert Toina. 2007, two representatives. Offensive lineman Aaron Sears, defensive back Jonathan Wade. 2008, quarterback Eric Ainge took home MVP honors, and tight end Brad Cottom represented Tennessee. 2009, Tennessee had three representatives. Defensive lineman Robert Ayers, running back Arian Foster, who, I don't know if you saw this, said some really wacky stuff on a podcast here lately. Let's see, Robert Ayers, Arian Foster, and then offensive lineman Anthony Parker as well. In 2010, Tennessee had three representatives. Long snapper Morgan Cox, who's still an all-pro long snapper in the National Football League. Offensive lineman Chris Scott and defensive tackle Dan Williams. One Tennessee Vol in 2011 took part in the Senior Bowl. That was tight end Luke Stalker. The mayor of Saxonville, that would be Malik Jackson, the lone representative from Tennessee, defensive tackle in 2012. There were two from here on forth until the last couple of seasons, where there's been three. In 2013, tight end Michael Rivera and offensive lineman Dallas Thomas. In 2014, offensive tackle Juwan James and defensive lineman Daniel McCullers. There was nobody from 2015 and 2016 teams. In 2017, quarterback Josh Dobbs and defensive back Cameron Sutton. In 2020, Juwan Jennings and defensive lineman Darrell Taylor. 2021, Josh Palmer, offensive lineman Trey Smith, playing in the Super Bowl. 2022, wide receiver Velus Jones, offensive tackle Cade Mays, and cornerback Alante Taylor. That was last year. And then, of course, this year, quarterback Hendon Hooker, offensive tackle Darnell Wright, and edge rusher Byron Young. I mean, look at some of these guys, though. I mean, these are some guys that went pretty high in the draft, right? Velus Jones, a third-rounder. Alante Taylor, a second-rounder. That was just last year. Palmer was not that high of a draft pick. Of course, we know Trey Smith wasn't. Juwan James was a very high draft pick a couple years ago. Darrell Taylor was a second-round draft pick. Josh Dobbs is a fourth-round draft pick. Continue to go on down here. I mean, you can continue to go on down the list here. I mean, there was a lot of high draft picks that have taken part and played in the Senior Bowl, and there's been many from the University of Tennessee. I think Will Bowling said it yesterday. There's been, 4 or 5 straight years where a quarterback from the Senior Bowl was a first-rounder. That's probably not going to happen this year, especially because Dobbs is injured. But it's pretty intriguing stuff there. It's a really, really good week. It's a great springboard towards your NFL career. And continuing to talk about the Tennessee players who were down there. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Hopefully we'll have more coverage from Mobile, Alabama coming up tomorrow on the show. Really, really looking forward to that. And as always, again, a big thank you for the audio over with Ramon Foster, Kayla Anderson, and Will Bowling, 104.5 The Zone, the morning show. Those guys had on Hendon Hooker and Darnell Wright yesterday, I believe, on their morning show, and gracious enough to share that audio with me. So, guys, give them a listen, support their show as well. Appreciate you guys, as always, for hanging out with us here today, making Locked On Balls what it is. Let's do it again tomorrow. Same time, same place, and we'll see you then. This is Locked On Balls.